Juliet Palmer, thank you very much for agreeing to speak with me. How are you doing?
I am doing very well, thank you. Yeah, I'm in Toronto, and well, we haven't got things quite in hand in the way that you do in New Zealand, sadly. So yeah, we have about 5 million people here, and we're up to nearly 800 deaths now. So and we're still in a kind of lockdown situation, although some stores have opened. Ones where you can be outside, so gardening centers. And it's one of these times when one wishes I could come home. I couldn't come home right now, even if I wanted to. So,
Right, are there no flights
yeah.
to New Zealand?
Well, if I did come to New Zealand, I would be quarantined for 2 weeks. So.
Yes, and evidently the reality of quarantine is pretty bad. You're literally locked in a hotel room 3 times a day. They give you a bag of food, and then once a day, if you sign up in time, you're allowed 45 minutes walking around the perimeter of a parking lot. It's like being in jail.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it's working for New Zealand.
Yeah. Now we're
say that.
I mean, I'm so proud of what's happening, and
Yeah.
what it means is that there's a chance that orchestra is going to be able to get started very, very soon. And in fact, Orchestra Wellington, next weekend, we're beginning a little alert level 2 season starring Amalia Hall as our concertmaster. She's going to be playing the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Mozart violin concertos, and then leading from the concertmaster seat 3 Mozart symphonies, the city symphonies, Prague, Linz, and Paris.
Wow.
So
I'm actually almost feeling like crying when you say that much.
yeah.
No, it's weird. I wouldn't think that I would be crying about that. But for us, I don't think we'll have any concerts. The earliest would be spring 2021.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and I saw that the New Zealand String Quartet they were maybe the first group to sort of get together in person and do it was a live stream, but it was actually people who don't live together playing music together. So that was very exciting. Yeah.
You can't compare how this pandemic has impacted people because, the ultimate manifestation of the impacting is, hundreds of thousands of people around the world dying and their families grieving over them. But in terms of industry, one of the worst affected, I think, is the performing arts, because we depend on people getting together in an enclosed space, hearing music. And for what we do, it's so archaic, because we're playing acoustic instruments in an enclosed space. But there's something magic about that. Do you want to speak about this idea?
Yeah, to me, it's not archaic. It's just sort of human. And so the other area, like obviously orchestras are really badly affected because you have so many people who are gathering on stage. That's tricky. And I hear about orchestras in Europe trying things with plexiglass screens, and I can't even imagine what that's like to play inside one, let alone what it does to the sound. But, choirs are just profoundly affected because particularly with the number of cases of transmission of COVID-19 amongst choirs. Was that you going ding with your
That
mail?
was me, yes. That's part of the charm of these pre-concerts.
Okay.
No.
Okay. It could happen before the concert. You just forgot to turn your phone off. So it's a real world feeling. Anyway, yeah. So choirs are badly affected. Interestingly, I have a couple of projects which are, a lot of it is outdoors. And I do a fair amount of work outdoors, which seems to be quite well positioned actually to survive or to get us through this time of lockdown. So we'll see. One project is called the Homing Project, and it was to be an outdoor work with a lot of community engagement. And obviously that's very difficult to do. So it's now the artistic team collaborating online with each other, but really giving each other prompts to go outdoors and do things like record a voice memo while you're walking at night and observe things, listen, talk about the interactions you're having with people or how you're feeling. So, in a way, they're helping us get through this time. And then other things are to do with movement. So we do a lot of trading back and forth. Like I might take that voice memo and well, the choreographer, she danced to that voice memo. And then I made a score to it. And then my daughter danced to the score outdoors. So we're doing lots of sort of switching up of our practice and just trying to find ways to collaborate that aren't completely disembodied, but that, yes, they're separate, but they were really trying to connect to where we are, whether it's indoors or outdoors. And hopefully that project, we will be able to take it outdoors in some kind of form, maybe in September or October, where we can perhaps have an audience that's spaced, or it's something that just a few people come and see at a time. So we'll have to see how it goes. I mean, really, we're just monitoring the situation and seeing how it evolves.
One of the things that I really believe, especially in Orchestra Wellington, but in general, is this idea of communication with an audience, or the sense of engagement with an audience, and the fact that what is music? Is it the piece of paper? Is it the performance? Or is it the interpretation of the performance, that is, what the audience thinks about it? Or is it a combination of all three? Where do you stand on this idea of what does music mean to a community? Do you have any ideas around that in mind when you compose? Or do you just put it out there and let fate just dictate what happens?
I had an orchestra piece that didn't get played because it was scheduled for March 14th. And yeah, they decided to cancel the day before at the rehearsal, the first rehearsal that I was about to hear the piece. Anyway, I did think a lot about what the connection for the audience would be for that piece, because for me, that piece was a process of grieving forests that had been burning in the Amazon and in Australia and in other parts of the world this last year, which had been quite overwhelming. Like, and as I was composing it, I just couldn't get away from this knowledge. And I thought, well, okay, here's a chance for this music to express grief. And I don't normally think about my music in terms of expressing emotion. I mean, anyway, I thought, well, this is a chance for grieving. Here we will be, I had thought, in a hall, 1,500 people or however many it is in that space. And we're sitting together, and what a unique, we come back to the sort of live performance, the beauty of it. Here we are in the space together, listening and feeling things together and taking time together. And what is it? Could this be a moment? Could this be 10 minutes, 15 minutes where I direct your attention and I give you the space to feel sadness or anger or whatever it is about this incredible loss that we're all experiencing, which I certainly can't think about every day, or it's overwhelming. And I think now we're in a similar situation with the pandemic. Like, you just have to take each day at a time, and you don't want to read the news too much. But, we've got these crises just stacking up on top of each other, of like climate crisis and pandemic. And is music a place where we can allow ourselves to feel the things that we need to feel in order to move through and move forward to action? So that's a very big, maybe a grand answer to your question, but I think that there's something in there about sort of a collective experience that taps into emotion and sense of being human that's not to do with words or argument.
Thinking back to the work that you wrote for Orchestra Wellington when you are composer in residence, I've long admired your composition. You're extraordinarily gifted, a composer with an incredibly sophisticated voice. And I wasn't at all surprised by the level of quality of Solid Gold, the 3 pop songs that you wrote, in that it was working not just with music, but also with words, and in a way that I was not prepared for. And I was totally blown away by the brilliance of the work. Do you want to speak a little bit about Three Pop
You're
Songs?
so kind. You're so kind.
No, I'm not kind. I mean, if it was rubbish, I would have told you. I mean, I probably would have chopped it out also, but.
Oh, you know, it was such a treat to work with you, with the orchestra, and, you know, with Madeline. You know, it's just a phenomenal singer, and I knew that that was, you know, I mean, I'd heard her. Probably I think I'd only heard her in recording. I'm not sure if I'd heard her live, but knowing that you're writing for a really great singer helps, because you can trust they're going to deliver the text, and they're going to deliver the emotion and the meaning and everything. And she's very dramatic on stage, so that's great. That's inspiring. And then, yeah, I had fun with the text. The text was really sort of collage of these titles of pop songs from, was it from my entire life?
Yes, I mean, I think
Possibly.
it's the title of the song.
It spanned solid gold. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So not my entire life. Clearly, I've skipped the last couple of decades. But yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun playing with the text and language and meaning, and also just this idea of what is a love song, and who's singing, and who's taking charge, and who's the object, who's the subject. So I was really enjoying playing with that, and I just love working with the orchestra. Like, it's just super fun, and I feel very fortunate to have had the number of opportunities that I've had to work with orchestras. So I think this piece that was going to be played maybe was my 7th or 8th orchestra piece this year. So yeah, and I had a great opportunity last year, actually around this time, it was last June, to work with the Detroit Symphony. So that was like a big piece. So it's just such a joy to sort of jump in, and the colors that you can play with, and it's a bit overwhelming at times, but it is pretty fun. And it's a huge luxury. Like, orchestras are a luxury item. It feels to me. I mean, a lot of my work is very lean and mean and DIY. So then when I find myself with an orchestra, it's like, whoa. Like,
every aspect of an orchestra demands the respect of the musicians within, and also the board and management. Every second counts in terms of the sheer cost, the enormity of complexities of running an orchestra. It's really important to be focused. But I also think, in terms of music, it's always great to distill things to their essence. What's the motivation? What drives a piece of music, an interpretation of music? But what drives the running of an orchestra? And I'm really basic about this. The art does that. And by extension, of course, the interaction with our community. But it all starts with the art, I think.
Yeah. But I think the interaction with the community is really important. And I can see that that's obviously the way that the orchestra is going to gear up in your whatever level 2, and as you go into level 1, that's those intimate music making moments where you've got the orchestra dispersed throughout the community in smaller settings. Like, I mean, orchestras do that anyway, but it just reinforces those connections and reminds people of why they care about this crazy big beast. It's not a big beast, it's a collection of all these really dynamic, interesting individuals and duos and trios, and it's those bubbles joining other bubbles. I mean, I'm trapped with my husband, and we've been singing and playing Dowland songs, which is quite delightful. Thank goodness. Yeah, like, you know, some of which were written during times of plague. So there's lots of weeping and dying, which is good. It's helped us get through. But just that making music together, you know, and realizing we make music, because as composers, it's often, you know, you write this thing and then someone else does it and you work with them, but it's a good reminder we are musicians, and how important that is to our sense of self and our well-being. Actually, I am the president of the Canadian New Music Network. So that's a nonprofit that connects all the kind of elements in the ecosystem of making creative music and sound across Canada. So it's presenters, performers, producers, artists, it's everyone, record labels, whatever. So actually one of the things we've been doing is facilitating online conversations where we have panelists and we talk about what's happening and what might happen in the future. But actually there's been a huge need just for community members. We've been having breakout rooms at the end of the Zoom session where people are in just groups of 3 and 4 just talking to each other, because the isolation and needing to just share where they're at. So there's a huge mental health toll that's
Absolutely.
On people. So anyway, that's sort of one of the things that we're offering right now, is just a way for people to connect. And actually the last panel had a lot of people, the panelists really were talking about how they're maintaining a creative practice in the midst of all this, and how they're actually just keeping healthy and sane. And it was quite beautiful, because one of the participants was Curtis Left Hand, who's an electronic artist who's Cree. And so he was talking about the importance of music and ceremony, which we don't talk about music that way in classical music. We don't generally talk about music as healing, and yet it is, and it's so good to be reminded of that.